Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's the Evil Frogman here. Borderlands 4's first paid DLC is set to come out next Thursday, or this coming Thursday, whenever you're watching the video. And honestly, I just want to take the time today to talk about my thoughts on it, and also kind of give a little TLDR roundup on my thoughts about Borderlands 4 as a whole, as it seems that right now it's a good time to do that talking, because a lot of people are bellyaching over the game and have, understandably, a lot of frustration and feedback. So I want to give my thoughts in this video, and yeah, we're going to try to keep it respectful and constructive. So if there's anybody watching from Gearbox or 2K, they can watch this and hopefully take something away from it which they find to be productive for the future of the franchise. And also saying that if you're going to leave a comment on the video or you're going to share it, please also do the same. Keep it respectful and keep it constructive, because I think that is going to benefit the community as a whole. The last thing we want is developers being harassed, and other community members as well. So yeah, there's that. And let's get right into it. So I want to start off with something which is going to be potentially quite controversial, and I'm sure it's going to ruffle some feathers, but I do think it's important to talk about. I want to start with talking about content creators, because naturally you're watching a content creator, and you're probably going to be watching more content creators when the content comes out, and you're going to be listening to their opinions. So I'll just start off by outright saying that I feel a lot of people are going to just take a content creator's word as gospel and base their entire opinion off of it. This happens non-stop, and I really dislike it. I don't like when people hear what I say and just naturally assume it's the right thing to say, and the same with other content creators. So just please try to make your mind up for yourself on any content that comes out, and also your thoughts about the game overall. That being said, it doesn't mean that their feedback should be disregarded because they only make content on the game. Maybe they don't play outside of that. I don't think their feedback should be disregarded. I also don't think that their feedback should be taken as gospel. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because this was a big thing at launch. Many creators, myself included, were told to stop whining and stop complaining whenever we brought up issues with the game, whether that be balance in the game or the lack thereof endgame in the game. This was something that came up non-stop, and it's very interesting because one thing that just happened recently is somebody on Twitter I caught underneath a post from Borderlands complaining about having nothing to do in the game, and I checked their tweets, and this was the same person who was getting on at me for, quote, whining over a month ago. It's just so funny to me that people are able to just all of a sudden shift their opinion 1 minute when it suits them. I just think that is crazy, and it happens so much in this community. So I just wanted to open up and talk about that because it is a really big issue. There is this animosity towards content creators, and I think it started, I'm pretty sure you know when it started, but there's this animosity towards content creators, and I think it is a really big issue. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. Now, as we move into the discussion about endgame, I've already made a video on endgame, but this is going to be slightly different. But as we move over to there, I want to talk about the base game of Borderlands 4, what I thought it did right and what I thought it did wrong. Now, I am still loosely planning on doing some form of review for the game, but to be honest, I don't know when the right time to do that is, because I don't know if I should review what I played at launch or if I should review it as a whole package. It's very difficult, so I'm not really committing to when I want to do a review. But the one thing I do want to talk about is my experience with the game. And genuinely, my experience with the game at launch was very good. I played hundreds of hours of the game, not even primarily for content, just because I was enjoying it so much. It broke my sleep schedule. I was up all night playing it. It was genuinely incredible. And I do think that it is the best launch state we've had for a Borderlands game. In terms of bugs, in terms of balance, in terms of overall polish. I know that there is issues with performance, which we're about to get into, but I do think that it launched in a very good state, all things considered, and I loved it. I thought the initial playthrough was fantastic. I chose not to do another playthrough for the game because I think that this game, much like 3, suffers from being too big, and I really just don't have any interest in doing a brand new playthrough until Cash comes out or any other new Vault Hunter, right? But I really did enjoy what I played, and I had really nothing but positive things to say about it aside from the performance. The performance was a big problem. Now, one of the things that I want to address very, very quickly, and I've spoke about this already, but I want to bring it up again, is that prior to launch, when I played the game both in Germany and in Los Angeles, the game ran very, very well. Now, of course, it was on monster rigs, but my rig isn't really a bad rig either. So I thought the game was going to run very, very well, and I told people that I had no doubts that the game was going to run really well. However, stupidly, I forgot that the game was going to have Denuvo. This was something that I all but confirmed with the devs earlier in London, and I just forgot about it. And I really, really regret that. It's one of my biggest regrets because I wish I could have warned people. I'm grateful that I warned people about the state of the Nintendo Switch 2 port, which you know how that turned out, and I'm glad that at least I was able to talk about that. Now, there is, I think, a little bit of a conversation to be had around why myself and a few other creators didn't get early access to Borderlands 4. Maybe it was because of our extended coverage of the performance of the game, but I wouldn't change that. It was something which I was really proud of, to deliver that news to people so they knew how it was running from a first-hand experience. And it just really sucks that I forgot about Denuvo, because I knew it would be in the game. It had been in Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands, and it really, really bummed me out that I forgot about it and I was glazing the performance before launch. Just really unfortunate. And the reason why I want to talk about performance is because it's still an issue, right? The game is still not running great for people, and we are, 2 months out from launch, right? Still not running great for people, still, of course, has Denuvo, and it still has this annoying issue where shaders have to recompile almost every time you launch the game. Now, of course, this doesn't happen for everyone, and it didn't happen to me for a while, but even when recording the Maurice's vendor video for this week, my game crashed, and when I restarted it, it had to recompile shaders, and then the game started stuttering when I was trying to record my video, and this is like a very, very big problem for the game. If the game has this startup mechanic, like a lawnmower almost, or a chainsaw every time you're trying to play it, that is not great, right? Like, that is really not great. Now again, it's running great for some people. It was running great for me after some updates, but it seems like every time they touch the game, something breaks. And this is a very, very big problem, which is reminiscent of what was happening during Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands. Now, this is where I'm going to shift the discussion into Gearbox doesn't seem to learn from what matters. Now, I really don't like that statement, but I'm gonna make it, and we're gonna navigate this together. Because if we're gonna talk about Endgame, we need to talk about the lessons learned and the lessons not learned. I do think that Gearbox listens to the community, and I do think that overall, Borderlands 4 shows that. And I think anybody claiming that Gearbox doesn't listen to the community is way wrapped in over their head. I don't see how you can look at this game and go, okay, they haven't listened to the player base, because they have, okay? It doesn't matter what you think about the state of the game. There is proof that this game has stuff in it which is because of fan feedback. Pearls being the biggest one. Myself and a few other creators were the biggest proponents of Pearls coming back. They finally gave in and they did it. Is it frustrating that it took them so long to do that? Absolutely. Same with the combat radar, right? Is it frustrating that it took them that long to do that? Absolutely, but they did it. So I do think that Gearbox listens to the community, but I will say, I don't think that Gearbox wants to listen to the community most of the time, and this is my problem with Borderlands 4 and the state of the franchise and the studio that's making it. Now, I'll give you an example of this. In Borderlands 3, they released the Maliwan takedown, and everybody loved it. They released the Guardian takedown, and people did not love it. There was a lot of controversy around it. However, the feedback coming out of Borderlands 3 was that overall, takedowns were a positive, and people liked them. So, what happened in Borderlands 4? Well, we were told that takedowns were dissolved into other areas of the game, and they had designed stuff with takedowns in mind. But of course, we all know that's not what people actually asked for. What they actually asked for is for takedowns to come back, and for there to be an invincible on launch. Well, takedowns didn't come back, and there isn't an invincible on launch, and that brings me to that discussion. There is not an invincible at launch in Borderlands 4 again, and I say again because many people expected there to be one in Borderlands 3, and there wasn't. So naturally you would assume they would listen to the player base and put one in Borderlands 4 at launch. and they didn't. And that is really, really bizarre. Speaking of the Invincible, however, we got a tease that this new Invincible Bloom Reaper that's set to release here soon is going to potentially see the return of a gun which sounds very, very similar to the Face Puncher from Borderlands 3. But the feedback from Borderlands 3 was that a lot of people didn't like the Face Puncher, and a lot of people like myself will tell you that the reason we don't like the Face Puncher is because it serves as a band-aid for a bad melee system. Gearbox famously in the past has not been good at doing melee. I'm sorry to put it bluntly, but that's just how it is. In Borderlands 3, there are bosses that they're just outright a pain to melee, and in some instances cannot be meleeed. In Wonderlands, they stepped it up a notch with bosses having literal invisible barriers blocking them so you couldn't melee them in a game with melee weapons, and in Borderlands 4, yet again, we have bosses that cannot be meleeed. And it seems like we're now going towards a direction where we're going to bring back another band-aid item instead of actually bringing improvements to combat where it's needed. And this once again is not what fans are asking for. People aren't asking for you to bring back stuff they didn't like, and they're not asking you to get rid of stuff they did like, but it's happening. And this is a really, really big problem, because it now makes me worry what's going to happen when Pearls come back. Because I know what I took from the community's feedback of Pearls. I took that Pearls weren't unique enough in what they did, and they also weren't strong enough. Now, what Gearbox is going to do to Pearls when they put them in the game, I have no idea. I personally would like to see them be a fixed part system so that we don't have to spend 60,000 hours getting all the different possible part rolls. That's not fun, and that's not what makes Pearls good. I don't know if Gearbox hears that and understands that. And the reason I bring this up is because a very worrying tweet was made a while ago from Grant Cow. This tweet was in response to K6 trying to explain very concisely that the BOD shotgun has unbelievably unattainable drop rates. Now, I'm not going to get into the math for this gun, but I will tell you that a lot of the rolls on the BOD shotgun are under 0.1% to actually drop on kill. The response he got from Grant, although it, I'm guessing, was just supposed to be banter, was that it sounds like you're getting a drop 20% of the time. And when I read that, I was really, really worried, because to me it was like, okay, here's someone who's trying to explain to you that there is an issue with certain drops in this game, and your response is to downplay it by saying like, well, you're getting a drop 20% of the time. But like, that's not the problem. And anybody who read K6's tweet, I think, understood what he was getting across, and I don't know what the purpose of that reply was, but it didn't put a good feeling in my mind for where we're going in the future, if that's how we're responding to legitimately good feedback. Because, like I said to Grant on Twitter, the way I would want to fix this is to move the BOD to a concentrated drop pool where you can more efficiently get it. For those of you that don't know, they're using drop pooling now, and that's the term I'm using for it. Basically, a boss could have 20% drop rates, but the BOD could be 4%, another gun could be 6%, another one could be 10%, right? So moving it to its own source would allow it to just be 20% and ease up that problem with farming. But it just seems like this completely went over the dev's head here. And also another tweet from Graham. Graham, if you're watching, I've got great respect for you, but I'm gonna just tell it to you straight here. This tweet mentioning that, you know, this is the idea of the mechanic with these wildcards, you know, it's supposed to have you change up your build. This doesn't work in a Borderlands game because we don't have loadouts. Telling people to switch up their loadout is fine when you're talking about, hey, maybe swap elements, something which is conventional. When someone has a melee build and there's an anti-melee mechanic and your response to the player is that they should swap up their build, that to me is just negligent. It's negligent to the state of the game. If there's no loadouts, you're telling the player to go back to a hub, respec their entire build for one weekly mission. That to me is crazy. Straight up, that is crazy. I cannot believe that is the answer there. Feedback of this is a bad mechanic, I don't think it plays well, should not be responded with, go and change up your build. In my opinion, this is bad game design. And this is again why I don't think the face puncher needs to be in Borderlands 4. Because now, when the face puncher does go into Borderlands 4, the answer is going to be, go grab the Face Puncher, you might like it. But if someone doesn't have the DLC, they're locked out of the Face Puncher, and even if they can get the Face Puncher, it still does not fix the root issue. All you're doing is covering it up. You can cover a plate of spaghetti in as much cheese as you want, but underneath it's still spaghetti, and if the spaghetti's not good, no one's going to want it by the time they cut through all the cheese, right? So these are just 2 tweets from 2 people in charge of the game that I genuinely disagreed with. And I'll also bounce off of that and talk about communication. The communication when Borderlands 4 first launched was fantastic. It really felt like finally we were being communicated on with a deeper level, something which I haven't felt in a while from Gearbox, and it was really, really refreshing. In fact, it was so good that after they made however many changes to Mr. Amon, I mentioned that I'd like to see Gearbox do a little more explaining of their changes in their notes, and whether or not it be coincidence or they genuinely listened to that feedback, some of the next notes we received had tons of explanation for what the goal was on those changes, and that to me was fantastic. It was like, okay, they're actually listening here, and they actually are trying to show people why they're doing stuff, which helps them break down the barrier between the developer and the casual player. Of course, players like Lazy Data and more don't need to know why certain things are done all the time, although granted it is always appreciated. This mainly benefits casual players who don't understand how the game works, know why something is being done, rather than just we're nerfing this by this, we're buffing this by this. So overall, it was really positive to see them doing that, and I was very fond of that, and the communication on Twitter was also great. However, as community sentiment around the game started to shift, because naturally people started to realize that a lot of content creators were not just whining when they talked about the issues with endgame and other certain balancing problems, it seems as though that level of communication has broken down, and now we don't have that conversation flowing like it feels it should be. In fact, most times, like very recently, we had a patch delayed or a hotfix delayed, whatever it was, and we didn't find out it was delayed until 30 minutes after it was supposed to go live. And then, just recently, with this patch or hotfix we just had for the weekly reset, that got delayed for seemingly no explanation why to the players, and when it did finally come out, there was no changes to the game. It was just the weekly reset, and there was no explanation of what could have possibly caused this delay, what they had in mind for this that didn't quite make it in. These were things which we probably would have been privy to near the start of the game, and it feels like now that's all gone. It's gone down the drain, and I don't know why. It feels like something weird is going on internally, and they just can't talk about it. Okay, so this is just something which for me is a real problem. I don't want to see communication break down. I don't want to see Gearbox feel like they can't talk to the community, whether that be because community members are harassing developers or because they just feel like people don't understand them. There needs to be a clear channel of communication, and I have to say, this is why it was handy to have a content creation team in the past, so that content creators could be that bridge between developer and player, because content creators knew how to take what the developers were saying and deliver it to the players in the way that it should be. But that's just my personal opinion. Now, I also want to just take a little sidetrack off of this to talk about my dislike for the way that 2K has handled the launch of Borderlands 4.
Oh shit!
Straight up, this is feedback and criticism they need to hear. 2K, numerous times leading up to the launch of Borderlands 4, you guys screwed Gearbox over by posting stuff early. This is a genuinely major problem, and it is unacceptable. This is a multi-billion-dollar company overseeing a lot of what's going down with the marketing for Borderlands, and I will tell you guys, I have spoke to Gearbox employees and confirmed this. A lot of the stuff that got out early that wasn't supposed to was on 2K. It is unacceptable. And so finally, after this long yap session, we get to the Headhunter coming up and my thoughts on it. And I will tell you guys that straight up, I'm not excited. And I have no reason to be excited following the Halloween event. It looks like to me it's a reskinned Order Bunker. Vault cards coming back doesn't do much for me unless we have mobbing content in the game. And genuinely, if it doesn't land, if this DLC does not land with players, I don't know where they go from here. But I will tell you where I want to see them go and what I think will be handy for the game. The biggest one is we need to pivot fast. There needs to be a pivot. We need to cancel whatever we've got planned down the road that we haven't announced yet, and we need to put our shift into endgame. What this does not mean is that we need to pad the game with level caps, which are going to lead to people having to refarm gear, which is going to frustrate players. It does not mean that we need 5 extra UVH ranks. It does not mean we need Mayhem 2.0. It does not mean we need, 600% weapon buffs out the arse. Like, we don't need to throw random stuff at the wall right now. What we need to do is have a critical thinking moment, look at the community and listen and action. Because I don't want to see people saying, we're listening 50 times. What I want to see people say is we are listening and we are actioning. We see what you're saying, we hear it, and we are going to look into implementing a lot of what you guys see as a problem with this game. A lot of times I heard before Borderlands 4's launch that this is trying to be the best Borderlands game ever. That is the goal behind bringing Pearls back and more. And I truly do believe that they are committed to that. So I would like to see further action on that. And I don't want to see us lose our sight on the prize here. And that should be listening to players who know what they want. Not people that are just here as tourists who are just going to disappear. Legitimate longtime fans who know what they want from this franchise. These are the people we need to listen to. So I'm excited at least to see where the game goes in the future. I hope it continues to improve, but I do think that there is a lot of water to trudge through here, and I hope that we have the right people leading the charge who can properly go through it in the correct fashion. But with all that being said, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember, please keep it respectful and keep it constructive, because if there are developers watching this video, I do want this to be a harvesting ground almost of helpful resources and information on where they can go from here and what they really need to do to make the correct shift they have to. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will check you all next time. Take it easy.